The bliss of the abyss, it's here now.
Welcome back to the Bliss of the Abyss, finding freedom in the unexplored and the unexpected. This week on the show, we have Alasdair Beckett-King, a legendary comedian, in that there is little historical evidence he exists. But you know what? He does exist. I mean, he was the Leicester Mercury Comedian of the Year in 2017. He's been on the BBC. He's performed across the UK, Glastonbury, the Fringe. He knows quite a lot about 19th century magicians, which is a shame because we didn't get to talk about that. What we did talk about is all kinds of amazing things, including, but not limited to, the South Sea Bubble, Scandinavian noir, Double Jeopardy, and our favourite Simpsons moments, to name but a few of these hilarious and interesting things that we decided to talk about. We went down some really interesting rabbit holes. Some of it was kind of funny, some of it was really funny, some of it was kind of deep, some of it was really deep. And speaking of deep, I accidentally released the previous episode onto the internet and learned a lot about the difference between 4.1 and 4.8 kilohertz. And believe you me, that is something that once you learn it, you are never going to unlearn it again. So if you listen to that episode that was released prematurely, where Alasdair and I sound like we've taken a hell of a load of Valium and just decided to go ahead with it anyway, then congrats. You're one of the few. But this should now sound normal and good and regular. So please, without any further ado or mucking around, welcome Alasdair Beckett-King. Okay, Alasdair Beckett-King, welcome to the Bliss of the Abyss.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Gosh, it's very nice to see you.
And it's nice to see you, albeit through the medium of the internet.
The internet, yeah, through two different mediums of the internet. The two of us have gone on this elaborate technological journey together, whereby we are interfacing through Zoom and also, shout out, I'm not being sponsored by them yet, through OnWeCaster, which is
a beautiful name.
What
isn't
a
it?
beautiful name!
It's a networking tool for French philosophers or German poets. What's it for? OnWeCaster.
It's for those of us who feel that even before the pandemic, we were living in a pandemic mindset. Now we have a way of broadcasting it in high quality audio.
It couldn't be more. It's such the opposite end of the spectrum to Zoom. Zoom is so, hey, here we are, Zoom. Whereas OnWeCaster is very much, let's let the conversation take its course.
Right.
I don't really have anything to contribute at this time.
So we're sort of,
you talk.
We're the median. So Zoom is like 2045. OnWeCaster is sort of 1730. And here we are in 2021.
Yeah, we're just lounging loosely in a coffee shop on Fleet Street, wearing wigs and smoking pipes of tobacco, just musing about the South Sea Bubble or something. Like, I can't even be bothered to try and understand it.
I have tried to understand the South Sea Bubble, by the way.
Have you?
I have. As far as I can understand it, it's a pyramid scheme.
Is that how it... Because my main knowledge is there isn't as much gold there as they thought. And so a lot of money went into it, reckoning that a lot of money was going to come out. And so I guess the people who came in hindmost were paying for the people who got in at the start, like most pyramid schemes. Very much
is the GME of its day. I think so. Yeah. Although the wild ride that is GameStop, when the grant came in, the most recent grant. No, not the most recent grant. The first one, the one that you really needed.
The self-employment.
The self-employment.
The government's please don't die.
Yeah. The government, so sorry I've torpedoed your entire career. Here's a few grand. that money.
It's kind of annoying because at the same time you think, oh, this is what you think I was earning, but also, yeah, that is what I was earning. But still, I was earning very little, but it's still annoying that you know that. Yeah,
when that came in, I thought, well, I could spend it on, important things that I need, such as food. And obviously, I probably did, partly. But I also made a conscious decision of a rubric of I will eat less food, drink less alcohol, live a slightly lesser existence, but put some money into GameStop stock.
Right. So you were involved in I don't really understand what happened. I think people were trying to short sell it, and so fans and general anarchists got involved to try and boost and you tried to boost its stock value in order to screw those people over and make them lose loads of money. Is that what happened?
That's kind of it. Yeah, it's sort of started as a
good story. There's no losers in this story.
There's no losers in this story apart from the hedge fund people, which I think we can all agree.
It's a victimless crime.
It's one of those sort of rare moments in modern life where, like, far left, far right, wherever you are, people are kind of like, fuck the hedge fund managers. I mean, I say that, but I was as a side hustle, I do like tutoring and private teaching and stuff like that. And I was helping this kid revise for his geography exam, and he what was it? Oh yeah, like indicators for quality of life came up, and one of them was people per doctor. And he was like, "What is that?" So I'm explaining, the more people there are per fewer doctors is an indicator usually of a society that's in a bit more trouble, and if there are more doctors, etc. It's a good thing. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I wanted to be a cardiologist." I was like, "Oh great, like the world needs cardiologists. That's a really good thing." But I said, "But you said you wanted to be. What happened?" And he went, "Well, there's quite a lot of school." And I went, "Yeah, that's true, but you you do want those people to be trained, don't you?" And he went, "Yeah, but I just decided it wasn't for me." And I was like, "Okay, so what would you like to be instead?" And he said, "A hedge fund manager."
What? Who is this kid?
And he's only 11, mate.
11?
He's already.
I haven't warmed to this kid. I'm glad you haven't given us enough information that he can be identified, or she, or indeed they can be identified. But I hate this kid. I don't like. I hope this kid sounds like the kid at the start of an 80s movie who needs to have a magical experience that shows him, her, or they the value of love and cardiology. It's like, I just want to be like my dad. I want to work in a business suit, and I want to go to work. I want to commute. No, come on, kid.
Unfortunately, via Zoom, I can't spike his juice with MDMA, so there's no way to alter
which
his...
Which would be the responsible thing to do.
Which would be the absolute... I mean, I believe it's the Hippocratic Oath or something like that.
That kid's going to have to open his horizons on his own.
Exactly.
Let's hope it happens.
I did put some money into the GME stock, just a bit, and it's been a wild ride since. I've been up, I've been down.
Yeah?
But ultimately, I feel like I'm on a moral crusade with my tiny little...
So where are you now? Have you got more or less? Is it worth more or less than it was when you bought stock?
That's a really good question. Yesterday...
That's the thing about stocks. You don't know. You have to keep checking, don't you? On the ticker tape.
That's right.
Buy, sell, let's see what it says.
Give me 400 and blah, blah, blah.
A guy wearing a hat with a little card that says press on it has just barged in with questions. I'll just deal with that.
It's all even weirder than that now, though. Like the modern stock exchange is even more dystopian. At least the New York one. I read this thing that they like moved the server as geographically close to it as possible because those
I've read about these things because they're talking about because the length of the cables and the speed at which the signals travel down the cables makes a difference.
Yeah,
I don't understand it, and call me an unreconstructed old historical materialist, but I don't understand how you can make money out of just moving numbers around. Surely people have to produce goods and services that are of value.
Nonsense.
In order for us to become wealthier as a nation. I mean, am I crazy?
You are crazy. Wrong? You're demonstrably crazy.
Fair enough. I guess I must be. It couldn't be that the entire system's ridiculous.
No, absolutely not. How do you think we're talking through Zoom, the future?
Yes, as well as on WeCast, the past.
Yeah, no, I got in as, like the South Sea bubble, I got in a little bit late. So I'm not becoming a millionaire like the guy. Roaring Kitty is the guy who, I think he had like 60,000 stocks and he bought them when they were like 50 cents a stock. And then they went up to $400 a stock.
Not bad. All right.
And I went down a little rabbit hole. He's just some dude who makes quite funny YouTube videos and he seems quite cool, right? He's not like a hedgy guy, not at all. And I went down this rabbit hole of after this exploded, watching his videos. So it's like back when he's buying them for like 60 cents, whatever they are, a stock. You know, he's kind of like, yeah, I'm pretty bullish on GME. You know, they've got some pretty solid fundamentals. You know, bricks and mortar, sure, there are troubles. You know, right, it's all of that. And then as this thing starts to take off, like suddenly he's like wearing shades. You know, he's got a cigar. He's going, can you fucking believe it? Woo! Doing like 7-hour-long videos where he's out of his mind.
I don't look. Obviously, I wish success on everyone, but I somehow feel that sort of stratospheric skyrocketing that is thrust upon some people due to circumstances often outside of their control.
Yeah,
I feel like it's good, but it can also be kind of bad for you. I suspect, obviously, nothing like that has ever happened to me.
Right.
No good things have ever happened to me.
Apart from this conversation.
They have, but slowly. Nothing has ever happened at a very quick speed.
Yeah. I wonder if that's probably for the best, right? Like,
I think so. I was thinking lately that there is, there's a lot of talk about among comedians about how hard it is to be a white man in comedy these days.
Oh, God, tell me about it.
What I was thinking is there are some people who spend their first years in comedy doing what you ought to do, which is like mess around and try and just learn how to do it and try all different things and find out what you want to be. And other people like me who are massive nerds who just chip away until they've built a 5-minute set that is quite good. And then they do that in competitions and they do quite well in competitions. And then they have nowhere to go because if you win a competition with 5 minutes, what are people going to do? Pay you to see you do that 5 minutes 10 times? What's that? You can't build on it in any way. So it's there's a real sort of there is the potential for sort of a very fast ascension up to a point, and then you stop. And some people at that point get picked up by a big agent or something, or they get a TV opportunity that maybe they're not ready for. We sort of talk about entitlement. I really think that some people have been sat down by some shyster and told, hey kid, I'm going to make you a star. This is your career mapped out. Look at, this line is going to keep going up on the graph. Yeah. And then when for a variety of reasons that doesn't happen, they feel, I actually have been cheated.
Yeah.
Because I've had to work hard because my initial gains haven't continued at the same rate. But that's because, like anything, it's easier to learn at the start. And also the point at which, when you're 2 years into comedy and you think you're the greatest comedian in the world, you were wrong about that. You were just relatively better maybe than some of the other people who you were surrounded by at the time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's good maybe to have this extra, a level of confidence that isn't appropriate. It's good maybe to believe that you're better than you are, because then you try things that you probably aren't ready for, and that's kind of good. But I think it can be dangerous when the world confirms that belief.
Yeah.
At the wrong time. And you go, oh, right, well, I think I'm a genius, and so do they. This is it. I'm set for life. Yeah. Because then when things don't pan out, as inevitably they don't, as you expect, you feel, there's a conspiracy against me. What was mine has been taken from me. And I think that's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, it's complicated in something like comedy because genuinely there, at your first ever set, you might be better than some people who've been doing it for a few years. Like that. It's possible. I've seen it. You're not technically better. You are just funnier. You have funnier ideas. Of
course. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree about that. And there is a sort of there is another end to it, which is that there are people who were making really good money back before the financial crisis, whose 20-minute set hasn't changed for years. And whose talent and effort is far, far lower than, as you say, this person who has just cobbled together a routine for the first time.
Yeah. And
there is also an entitlement there, which is like, the universe promised that I was going to be able to continue making like 50 grand a year for doing 2 days, for doing 20 minutes work 3 times a week. Which the universe did not promise that.
And I feel like
doing that without any innovation or hard work.
Yeah, well, absolutely, right. And I think like it's interesting because I think those shysters, right? They've always existed, especially in entertainment, but in all things. Look, I don't know why we're referring to the South Sea bubble, but like obviously they're...
Yeah, if you could bring this back to something that the listener might understand, like the South Sea bubble.
But like, shysters have always been about over-promising. And it's certainly in something like entertainment, they can pump someone's head full of dreams pretty easily. But then now it's like you've taken it through a lens and just exploded it through the internet. And you can literally watch someone go from obscurity to overnight millionaire for like a silly video.
Yeah. Yes.
But then you can, in their head, you can see why it would happen. They're just a human, right? That they conflate the success with the earning it or it being somehow owed to you.
Yeah. There's a weird kind of numbers game going on. There's a couple of things going on there. And if this sounds like me griping about how horrible it must be to be more successful than I am, maybe that's what's happening. What's the line from The Simpsons? Mo saying something like, "Rich people ain't happy. From the day they're born to the day they die, they think they're happy. But believe me, they ain't." So maybe I'm just doing that.
Not a bad Mo, by the way.
That's all right.
It's not bad.
Possible. It's not great, but it's okay.
I'll take it.
Maybe I'm just doing that. There's a weird thing that internet fame, we treat internet fame as if it were the same as pre-internet fame.
Right.
When you can have hundreds of thousands of followers, 1 million followers on YouTube. And I think if you've got millions of followers on YouTube, you do start to make decent money.
Yeah, I believe it.
But you can have a lot of followers on Twitter and be poor.
Yes.
And because it's not highly monetized, there's no advertising. So you can be properly not well off and be Twitter famous, and it doesn't mean anything. But people treat those internet people as if they have the sort of protections of a celebrity. Like if you write a letter to Madonna, Madonna's not reading that letter. But if you tweet a comedian who's touring in the UK and who you like off the TV, it's them. They're the ones using the Twitter. Unless they've reached that stratospheric level, which few people reach, it's just a person.
Yeah, most of the time, right? And even some who go to the stratospheric level, they're still like, yeah, but I still want that to be my thing, right?
You are talking to them directly, and and many of them don't have that sort of the financial security and the life security that comes with celebrity. But they do have but they are able to. Piss off their fans, or so they're getting some of the really hard bits of fame without but a house would be nice to get, without the house with a big gate and a panic room and all the other stuff that celebrities are supposed to have to protect them from their crazy fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, the trappings of capitalism. Oh, listen to me, I'm so clever. The shiny things that are sort of dangled in front of young people that they think mean success is not really the thing to aim for. And I think...
Yeah, you want to be a hedge fund manager.
Just
go straight for the money.
But relative to what you were saying earlier, it's like, what I equate it to is lottery winners or... who are the other group? It doesn't matter. Lottery winners is a fine example of the people who get a hell of a load of money immediately, and some very high percentage of them within a few years don't have any of that money anymore.
Good for them, I say. I am an apologist for lotto louts. For me, if you get $1 million and you don't $1 million quid, if you don't immediately buy a quad bike and a 2-litre bottle of cider and just ride around, I don't respect you.
That's where your mind went. Alasdair.
What else?
Dream bigger.
Like turn the whole of the local green into a quad biking range.
There we go.
And just drive around it with your pals.
You know what I just found out recently? I think this is what I'd do if I suddenly won $1 million. You can get planning permission on any bit of property you want. Like, you can't go through with it without getting the owner's permission, but you can draw up all the plans, get everything approved from the council, knock on someone's door and show them the blueprints and go, "Can I do this to your house?"
Really?
Yes.
That's fantastic. What a loophole. What a loophole. The reason they haven't closed it is there aren't enough eccentric millionaires.
Yeah, right.
that it hasn't been necessary to close this loophole because nobody is rolling up with a pair of tinted spectacles and a cane and a top hat and getting out of a carriage and sauntering up to a house and saying, "Do you want a turret?"
Hello, my good man. As you can see, this small bungalow will soon be a 5-story castle. Interested?
All I need is your name on the dotted line.
And then you sign it and it disappears in a puff of smoke. Yeah. Which, side note, by the way, Faust, idiot.
Another good reference there for the educated listeners.
Do you think this has been too obscure? I mean, I've seen you live a couple of times, and you came and performed at my night before, and I feel like you do like you've got a really good blend in your comedy of being like leaning into your physical and vocal characteristics.
So, for the benefit of listeners, I've got long red hair and a beard, look a bit like, and I've got a sort of Jesus-y Viking quality. And so I do have,
exactly.
I do have a fair number of jokes about what I look like. I should say I looked like this before I started doing comedy. I didn't start comedy and then think, this is hard, I should grow a more ridiculous face. And then it didn't happen that way around. It was natural.
No, but like, I think that's, almost all comedians do some reference to how they look, and usually it's it's a cliche, but it's the only thing that you and the audience both know is what you look like and what your name is at that point. So of course it's a stock way of starting a set is to do here's a joke about what I look like, but there's a reason for that. It's like the way at the start of films you introduce the characters. It's because it makes it easier to understand the film if you do it that way around. You don't have to, but it's not cheating to do it that way. Yeah, but to finish the compliment is that alongside that you also have like I was looking up because you won this funniest joke award. And you also have these sort of like pithy. I don't remember that happening. I might have been in a list of good ones, but I don't think I ever won a best joke because you have to be good at one-liners for that, and I'm not good enough. It's always the genius one-liner people who win. Well, the genius one-liner people are, that is a different skill. Yeah, that's a... But then again, with that... The thing is, though, they can't do anything else in their whole lives. They can only do those jokes. So it's more of a curse. So that's why nobody envies them. But they have to be comedians, because otherwise they just do puns all the time. Right, and nobody likes puns, ultimately. Yeah, these people are absolutely amazing on stage and off stage, like broken robots. They're unable to function. They've forgotten what their true purpose was. They're Mo. Your joke that I'm going to butcher to you, though, was whenever someone says, I don't believe in consequences, I say, oh my God, me neither. You did butcher because you misread coincidences as consequences. Did I? Yes. Would you like to read it again with the correct keyword? No. So the joke was, whenever someone tells me I don't believe in coincidences, I said, oh my God, me neither. Although I have been told it's also a Milton Jones joke, which is very believable. Parallel thinking, or are you... I have definitely not stolen it from him. Oh, methinks the lady does. I've Googled it excessively, because whenever you think of like a short joke, you Google it. Yes. So I Googled it when I thought of it. And since somebody said, I think Milton Jones did that, I've Googled it in his name. I've never been able to find out where he did it. But, he writes so many jokes. It's probably there somewhere. I don't do it anymore for that reason. I definitely thought of it, but I'm sure he also thought of it. And first, which is what matters. One of my favourite funny things that I thought of, and I never got to turn it into routine because I thought of it and then I had it as an idea and I did it on stage, but I never recorded it. And then someone said, I think his name's Carl Barron. He does that joke. And I looked up and it had been recorded. And I was like, oh no, but I know that my brain came up with that before this, because this is only just, he's like, is some new material. But I got to give it to him. And I've said the same thing. I just had a little note in my phone that said pronouncing Orangina, like Orangina. and I then happened to see David O'Doherty on, I think it was Live at the Apollo. He does that exact. It does a bit about mispronouncing Orangina as Orangina, which is it's good in a way to know that. Oh, so that is a funny premise that I never developed into anything. It sounds a little bit like vagina. Just to explain why. Thanks for clearing that up. I was funny. I wasn't quite.
Or angina, if you think angina's hilarious.
Right? I mean, there's a world in which angina can be funny. It's not
principally because it sounds like vagina.
Basically, I think. And I think maybe because if the doctor said it to you and slightly coughed as he said it, it would be quite a good sketch. But other than that, the realities of it...
it's not hilarious.
It's not the most funny. Yeah. What would you say is the funniest illness or disease or malady? Malady.
Probably anything related to the bottom. The weird thing is that when bottom-related accidents occur, they're very, very much not enjoyable to experience, but they are very funny I was going to say an onlooker. I don't think they're funny to see or to experience, but generally things related to the bottom.
If they're retold, yeah,
as long as it's being reported rather than witnessed.
Yes, and perhaps bodily misfunctions might be funnier than sort of impalements.
Yeah, indeed.
Right.
No, nobody likes an impalement. I think what you like to see it's the essence of slapstick is you want to see someone with pride and dignity fall down a little bit. So you want to see, a vicar fart or something.
There we go.
Or a wealthy businessman fall into a barrel, something like that.
And then we can roll him down the hill and off exactly. Niagara Falls. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds, as medical conditions do, I don't know I don't know what the name for that is as medical conditions go, but that's quite funny.
Sounds like it could have been a cure for something once.
Yeah, in the 1920s, they were always like, you've got the croup, get in the barrel.
I was teaching the history of medicine once. How? I don't know, but I was. And one of the best cures for the plague was that you had to strap a pigeon to your buboes. A live pigeon.
What? How do you even strap a pigeon to a bubo?
I mean, with difficulty, I would imagine.
Velcro.
Velcro.
This is years before the invention of Velcro. So
yeah.
There's no... Wow. Probably leather thongs.
If you jumped into a time machine with some Velcro, that's all you had, and you turn up in, let's say, 1612, would you be able to explain what Velcro is to the people?
I think I could. I would use sticky jack. You know that those plants that stick to you.
Oh yeah, I call it Sticky Willy.
Sticky Willy. Well, that's much funnier. Wow.
You can have that.
It's not called that where I'm from. In the Northeast, it's called Sticky Jack. Although we know how he got sticky. It's great to have the backstory.
Yep.
So I would use Sticky Willy because Sticky Willy sticks to my hair. So I would be able, even if you didn't have the right kind of clothing for Velcro, I would be able to say it's like that.
There's a good analogue for it.
I have to go and find some Sticky Willy to explain it.
Yeah.
Because obviously the name has probably changed. It's not because the name is different between wherever you grew up and wherever I grew up.
Yeah. So a few hundred miles difference already. It's so
a few hundred years ago, who knows what?
Who knows?
What kind of sticky thing it was called.
Yeah, that's funny. I was doing some gardening today. You know what happened this morning? I went out. My wife has got some nerve pain in her elbow, and I was horrible, right? So I was I got on my trusty steed, and I was like, I shall get you a compress and a brace for that elbow, and I rode out. And I couldn't find one in 3 places. They'd sold out of only elbow braces. It's like, what's going on out here?
Big run on elbow braces.
Now that we've sorted out the toilet paper situation. The world just continues to make less and less sense. But I ended up, because of that, travelling further afield than I'd planned. And on the way, I just noticed as I went, I was like, all of this sort of scrubland and bits on the side that no one cares about, and things were growing. And some of them were like, oh, that's a nice plant growing there. Oh, that's a nice flower. And so I ended up coming back with the elbow brace and also just a bag full of plants that I just pulled up from...
I think you might be admitting to a crime.
Is that? But this is what I'm trying to wonder.
Those were wildflowers. I think you have just admitted.
Is it a crime?
To a crime.
Because
yes.
I've planted them in my garden. That's what I've been doing. And I feel like some of them were on areas that would have just been mown over by the council.
Like, you stole my jewels. Yes, but I put them in my house. So I haven't The jewels are fine. They're just now they're in my safe. So is that a crime? How is that a crime?
Wait, are you saying that wildflowers and jewels are of equal value?
I'm saying wildflowers are the jewels of the motorway.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. A scattering of emeralds and rubies.
So I guess I go out in the garden, dig them all up, and...
I think it might be a crime to move them, in which case that would be equally criminal. Putting them back would be just as much of a crime.
Wait, hold on, though. Double jeopardy? Maybe.
To be clear, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think double jeopardy means that you can't be tried for committing the same crime twice.
So hold on, wait. You're not a lawyer. You're not an expert on the South Sea bubble. I don't understand what's going on here. My booking manager
get on this podcast without any of the necessary qualifications. Double jeopardy does not prevent you from committing the same crime twice. That's not what it is. Otherwise, you'd be like, double jeopardy. So I killed 2 people. Just try me for one of them. Can't do me for the same crime twice.
Speaking of Simpsons references, I was watching the best of Lionel Hutz the other day, and there's just a bit where he just goes, I rest my case. And the judge goes, you rest your case? Oh, I thought that was just an expression. Case closed.
Oh, Lionel Hutz, so many great lines.
Oh, one of my... Who's your favourite Simpsons character?
Oh, it's so hard to choose. I think Lionel... I do like the small recurring characters like Lionel Hutz, like Troy McClure.
Yeah. Hans Moleman.
Hans Moleman has some amazing lines.
I mean, speaking of ennui caster, my favourite Hans Moleman bit is he goes out on a date with, I think it's Selma or Patty, one of the two. And she's sort of like not expecting him to be Hans Moleman. And it's a terrible date. And he's got his flowers and they're wilting. And it goes to the end and she sort of like, they're in a car and zooms up and she kind of kicks him out. And he's just sat there with his wilted flowers on the side. And he looks up and he goes, this isn't my house.
The Bliss of the Abyss.
You know, we're talking about internet fame and the weirdness of it. And I think it's a weird sort of numbers game, because we were talking about, you know, the big agent who will sit people down and say, you're going to be a star, kid. But from their point of view, like, someone is. So as long as you sign the 10 people who seem most likely to be big stars, it's very unlikely that you will win the lottery, but it's likely that someone will win the lottery. It's very unlikely that your YouTube video will go viral and then, you know, you'll get invited into space or whatever it is. But it's not unlikely that will happen to someone. And so it gives us a skewed sense of how frequent, how this happens. And the weird thing is, I think that everybody who does have, get a big break of some kind goes, but I got that because of my talent, because I created a thing that was good. And then I got all of this off the back of that. And that's true. But the flip side of it is that there were loads of people who did something that was just as good, who for one reason or other didn't catch anyone's attention or didn't get the same amount of attention. And so it's very easy to imagine that there's a meritocracy happening because everybody who makes it is good. But in a meritocracy, everybody who's good would make it. And that's totally not what happens, which is not in any way funny, but it is correct. And that's what I'm offering here. Not jokes so much as correct observations.
You're under no obligation to be funny or even correct, quite frankly. That's not the activity we're engaged in.
Oh no, I've completely misunderstood the format of the podcast. This is the Unfunny Wrong cast.
Which, by the way, is probably already out there and a viral smash hit.
I think I've listened to a few podcasts that were neither funny nor correct. So there's a few of them out there.
There's a lot of them out there, yeah. Mm-hmm. Tell you what you're making me think of, talking about sort of internet and fame, or maybe I'm thinking more about sort of infamy, because without sort of naming names or getting particular into scandals, there's over the course of lockdown, there's been sort of quite a few events in the comedy industry abroad as well as in the UK.
Not in the old-fashioned sense of events that are arranged where audiences come and everyone has a lovely time.
There's been very few of those.
Remarkably few of those. There have been other kinds of events.
There have been, some less salubrious events.
Yes, Me Too type stuff, as well as beefs and
some of them sort of quite disturbing and icky, but some of them sort of, to me at least, smacking of everyone being locked down and having nothing to do and getting into very big arguments over sometimes just like semantics. Yeah.
Yes. Inevitably, with all of these things, the same mechanism facilitates a legitimate fight against something that is bad and a pointless argument over completely lacking in nuance over some pedantic and meaningless nonsense.
Yeah,
the same mechanism. It's the same. We're all driving through the same channels, and the same sort of social media mechanisms inflame really legitimate stuff and really not legitimate stuff, and also weirdly sort of smush the difference between those. So often you find yourself being forced to defend something that's wrong or defend someone who is wrong because what they're being criticized for is not the thing that they did that was actually wrong.
Right.
And it gets very messy.
This is why I was bringing it up, because when I don't tend to dip my toe in too much, but I will occasionally, especially if I think it's really tipped way too much one way. But I've noticed that you are very erudite and precise at pinpointing the inequity in the debate. And like you say, like defending somebody not for what they've done, because what they've done is probably objectively the wrong thing, but the way that they're being pilloried or attacked is either out of balance to the initial thing or now being tarred by something that actually has nothing to do with it. Sort of the equivalent of if you're in an argument with someone and they go, stop shouting. And you're like, yes, but the point I'm making is correct. And they go, stop shouting. And then you start shouting and you're losing on two fronts now.
Yeah, I'm not enthusiastic about online bullying and shaming and harassment, even when the people who are being shamed are objectively wankers, because
why is that? So I guess my point is, because I've noticed you do that, and I really like your position that you put forward. I was just wondering, where does that come from? What do you think that is?
I'm not enthusiastic about defending people who I don't like and who have awful, horrible politics, terrible opinions, make crude bullying jokes. But I think it's a fact. It relates to what I was saying before about our confusion about levels of celebrity. So I'm not terribly upset that people were having a go at the billionaire J.K. Rowling because she was wrong, because I think J.K. Rowling was wrong. And if she wasn't wrong, she was extremely disingenuous in her Turf Wars article.
Oh, right. So this is a specific... Just for those who haven't, can you quickly sort of summarise?
Okay. Probably not. Would it be easier not to make a specific reference?
Fine.
To explain
I'll find it and I'll reference it in the show notes. Yeah. That's fine.
J.K. Rowling takes a stock gender critical position, as she understands it, which I think profoundly mischaracterizes the criticism she received from trans people or trans activists and misrepresents the nature of the debate, as well as sharing what I think are genuine concerns about how trans rights, in her view, threaten cis women's rights, or women's rights, as she would put it. But I think we have a problem when someone is expressing genuine fears that aren't demonstrably grounded in reality, because trans women have been using women's toilets for years, and it's okay. Like, it's demonstrably okay. Women aren't safe in toilets, and they aren't safe outside of toilets for a variety of reasons. But we do not have a system that keeps trans people out of toilets in order to keep women safe. That's not the situation we live in, and it shouldn't be the situation we live in, I think.
But there's a moral panic around it, isn't there?
I think it's a moral panic. However, her fears are obviously sincere, but which puts us in a difficult position, because when you're criticizing someone who's being honest but wrong, it's hard because it feels like it feels to them like they're being gaslighted or being insulted, and she is frequently being insulted. On the other hand, she is a billionaire author with the support of the entire media establishment and absolutely loads of money. So she can get off Twitter and it not affect her career. That's very different to when you're talking about like an indie game dev who relies upon Twitter for their career. That person cannot leave Twitter and still continue to make a living, or a less successful writer or journalist. They don't have the same defenses. So I think, and neither do they have the same platform. So treating somebody who is just as wrong as J.K. Rowling is, but much, much less famous with the same level of severity in terms of criticism, I think would be wrong. Not that justifies sending death threats to anyone, obviously. But there is a weird situation whereby we have, as a master of principle, not to hold people responsible for things that other people who are like them do. Like, group punishments aren't acceptable, which means that trans people don't all have to behave well on the internet before they deserve rights. So the fact that some trans people behave badly is not pertinent to whether trans people deserve rights. That has to be an essential principle, in the same way that we would say that for any minority group. The bad behavior of people within a minority group doesn't affect the way we ought to treat an individual from that group, because you don't have to behave respectably to be accorded basic rights.
I feel like we all instinctively know that because we've all been in a school classroom as a kid, and the teacher says, right, if anyone does that thing, the whole class is going to stay behind. Someone does the thing and you all stay behind, and you feel that sort of like, this is not fair.
That is essentially not fair. It's extremely unfair, and it's also an essential part of racism and lots of other forms of prejudice in which people are treated as if they are representatives of the group to which they belong, which is rarely appropriate. Right,
guilt by association, and usually by association that you can't even help.
Exactly, guilt by an implied association. That is. I'm expressing this very clearly. I didn't prepare anything. I didn't know we were going to talk about such a serious subject. So I have a problem when people when we're talking about J.K. Rowling being cancelled. And we're also talking about a guy who loses his job because people on Twitter thought he was doing a white power gesture in a photograph, even though it turned out he wasn't. That is obviously absurd. It's ridiculous that guy lost his job. But to treat those as examples of the same phenomenon, I think, is pointless, because they're transparently different things. And it doesn't benefit anyone to regard these as examples of the same crazy phenomenon whereby people are getting cancelled these days. In general, the people who really suffer are the people who don't have huge platforms. And it annoys me that we've got people like that guy losing his job for no reason. While on the other hand, you get people who are able to play the culture war game, strut around calling themselves cancelled, building a career off of the back of supposedly having been cancelled. It's ridiculous that we allow them to do that and not call them out and saying, well, what happened to you is you were criticised for saying a thing, whereas what happened to him is he was fired for no reason. We also forget that the people doing the complaining aren't the people who make the decisions.
California man fired over alleged white power sign says he was cracking his knuckles.
I think that is the story, yes. And as I read it, there's the white power symbol is the OK symbol, which is barely an OK symbol, which is sort of an alt-right joke where they decided to make that symbol into a white power symbol, even though it used to just be the OK symbol. So it's kind of a joke at the expense of us social justice warrior types, because if they pretend it's a white power symbol, we'll start going, hey, look, it's a white power symbol. And then people will look at us and say, those people think the OK gesture is a white power symbol. They must be ridiculous. Yeah. And it's one of the ways that they use humour to sort of play the online left.
Right. And it's quite effective.
Ridiculous.
That sort of
and it is quite
shit posting mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think we underestimate the I don't want to use the word sophistication because I don't think there is any sophisticated far-right humour, but I think we underestimate how deliberately they're using humour to create plausible deniability around pushing extremist far-right ideas. Gosh, this has become serious.
It has, hasn't it? I mean, I guess what you were saying was really interesting, because I was thinking, I think maybe we want, like, I was thinking about this recently because my nieces are quite young, and very early on they developed this sense of justice very early on, even pre-verbally, but then once words start to come in, it's very clear that they have these ideas of things that are just like a base level right and wrong, and then they have to be taught other ones that are more like social rights and wrongs, you know, like stuff to do with how you treat other people in more nuanced ways that are more complicated. But like on that base level, there seems to be like this principle underlining it, and maybe a few principles. And I think we want that, but the problem is there also has to be subjectivity. There also has to be like, I'm against the death penalty, right? But if I think of the Nuremberg trials and Goebbels is on the stand, I wouldn't shed a tear if we decided to hang him.
I'm not absolutely furious about Mussolini hanging from a lamppost. I can live with it.
Yeah.
While in principle, I don't agree with it.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like the problem is, it's like the grain of sand problem in philosophy.
No.
So
I don't.
So you have a heap of pebbles, and you take off one pebble, it's still a heap. You take off another pebble, it's still a heap. At a certain point, it is no longer a heap, but you know, it's not when you get down to one.
Yes.
There's some, but there's no cut-off point where it's like no longer a heap of pebbles. But we want there to be.
Yeah, and for legislative reasons, we need there to be. Like, adulthood works like that, except that for obvious reasons, we have to have a point where you become an adult legally, even though in reality, that isn't how adulthood works.
Right. So, yeah, society requires us to put arbitrary lines in the sand where biology wouldn't draw them that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, we got.
So I think that's everything sorted out there. I think we've cleared up a few things. If there are any problems that remain unsolved, please do write in, and we'll try and address those in a future episode. I find the discourse, for want of a better word, around cancel culture and the online political discourse, I think we frequently miss the point. And I think one of the problems is that we find it very hard to imagine that someone who agrees with us would also behave unreasonably. You know, so you might be a nice middle class gender critical feminist thinking, well, nobody who agrees with me would be sending violent and lurid messages to trans people on Twitter. They are. You equally might be a trans activist thinking, nobody who agrees with me would be sending death threats, violent and lurid death threats to gender critical feminists on Twitter. They also are, which is not to say that I think both sides are equivalent, either morally or in terms of bad behavior. I don't know. I think the reason that the two groups aren't equivalent is that gender critical feminists shouldn't be weighed against trans activists, because gender critical feminists in their ideology pose a threat to all trans people. And it doesn't work the other way around, because I don't believe there is a demonstrable threat posed by the existence of trans people.
No, because
women.
Like you said, and we agree about the moral panic thing with I don't know, let's pick the bathroom issue. You can 100% guarantee that if there had been this huge spate of assaults, or even, 5, 1, whatever, it would be plastered across.
Well, we do hear about horrible trans women who do horrible crimes, and we hear about the same ones over and over and over again. The thing is, the world is a big place, and if you want to find an example of a person who you don't like who's committed a terrible crime, you can.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily tell us anything about that group. You probably also can find a cis man who's going to pretend to be trans for nefarious, but you can nitpick, as I think they say, examples that support any case at all, which is why looking at a question of principle is a better way of deciding how we ought to do things, I think. But I think we have this idea that nobody who agrees with us could be awful, and it just isn't true. There are people out there who agree with you on any issue, including one of the weirdest things about cancel culture is if people on Twitter who come out against cancel culture get death threats for it. People on Twitter who come out in favor of cancel culture in one way or another, whatever cancel culture means. People on Twitter who come out and say you shouldn't have signed the Harper's letter get death threats. So it's like, so this person is receiving death threats because the people who are sending the death threats hate cancel culture. And it's like, well, what does it mean then? What does it mean if it refers to all of these obviously contradictory things? Nothing. What it means is there's a lot of bad behavior and we have a real problem with harassment on social media. And I would like to present that as if it was a problem caused by left-wing people being too easily offended.
Whereas
that's not what's happening.
I think it might be... I've got a friend who's a philosopher, and he told me this story the other day. And I mean, literally, he's a philosopher, not just like he smokes joints and says profound things.
I'm so glad you clarified, because I've entirely shifted my opinion of him.
Yes, no. So and I believe they call it an instructor, and he's writing a book called Beyond Moralism. He's actually a philosopher. But he told me this story, and I think it illustrates what we're talking about, which is maybe cognitive dissonance is a way of looking at it, or lack of critical thinking. But it was when he was young, and this kid, he's German, he moved to the UK when he was like 6, bilingual. This kid comes up to him and goes, I hate Germans because they're racist. Nice. And even at that young age, he was like, this is just, that's just, that whole way of thinking is completely wrong, completely bankrupt. There is a broken loop there that you are fixing in your head and allowing to go round and round and round. And I feel like all of the broken discourse you see is one form or another of that. And what do we do to fix it? Mr. Alasdair Beckett-King, 30 seconds on the clock.
Am I allowed to repeat myself at all, or must I speak without deviation or repetition? I don't know. I think that's ridiculous when we all know it's the French who are racist. Such a racist country. Can't stand those guys. It's very difficult. I don't have the answers. And I hope I haven't simplified the internet beefs that I have referred to, because they are vastly complicated and nuanced. I've tried to sketch out where I stand on them. Hopefully not in a way that's going to offend your listeners. Because I don't enjoy offending people. I did offend some Christians recently.
Well, why? What did you do?
Well, I was on the television, which isn't something that happens to me a lot.
I thought you were going to say that was what offended them, because it's just some instrument of the devil.
I don't pay my license fee to see whimsy, okay? It's not what I like. Please put something better on. Now, fair play to those people who just like better jokes. I probably did quite upset them. But no, I said that Jesus was imaginary on Mock the Week last month. And in my defense, he is. However, I understand that that's offensive to, I don't actually enjoy upsetting religious people. I know. In my defense, several of my Christian friends were quite happy with the jokes that I'd done. And I've seen Christians and Muslims and other people make jokes at the expense of the audience for being unbelievers and infidels and going to hell. And I've laughed at those jokes without believing that they were true, because I understand how a joke works. But I do think that I think what I thought was interesting about it is that they weren't angry so much that I had made fun of Christians, but so much that I had made fun of Christians instead of Muslims. And several people came up to me, it's like, oh, you say that, but you wouldn't have a go at Muslims. And I think we all know why, which is that I'd be too afraid of being terroristed or something, which, to be fair, would be scary.
No one wants to be terroristed.
I don't want to be terroristed.
No.
I am afraid of being terroristed, but hopefully in proportion with how likely it is to happen to me.
Yes, although to be fair,
it's a scary thing.
A Christian might terrorist you as well.
A Christian also capable of terroristing. I think for me, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how humor works, because I was brought up in a Christian country and I was taught all of this stuff in school, and so were most of the audience. And that is crucial, because I can come out there and say, it's the difference between me saying that my dad has a stupid hat and me saying that your dad has a stupid hat.
Right.
Like, well, who am I? That hat might have sentimental value. It's much more insulting, but I can make fun of my own dad. I can make fun of the culture in which I was raised.
Yes.
I can make fun of the religious propaganda I was fed in school. But if I go out there and say, this minority group that make up, I think, about 4% of Britain, they believe a whole load of nonsense, it's not a joke anymore. I also don't think Allah exists. But it isn't funny for me to say that. I can't say that in a way that will make a mainstream British audience laugh. Because it's not a joke.
Well, we should be... You'd forget the sort of punch up, punch down argument. You should be able to punch yourself. You're your own things. You can, like we were saying at the beginning, you can make comments about the way you look, the way you talk, the way the things you were brought up with. Those are your things. If we're now policing even that, it's like, no, you shouldn't fat shame yourself. It's like, I'm allowed to if I'm fat.
It's a weird. I've been in that situation. Like, I've been booked for ginger gigs and vegan gigs. I'm also a vegan. Sorry, listener. And that's difficult because most of your jokes about these things are self-deprecating. So when you do it to an audience of people who also share that quality, they're like, no, we aren't arrogant, or
which is quite an arrogant response,
or ridiculous looking. I mean, unlike vegans, we are the worst. Like, at a vegan event on a panel, we were the panelists were asked to name our favorite animal, and I said humans, and I got booed.
Oh my God! By a room full of humans
in this vegan event. And no animals. Like, this is weird, right? If we all claim that we love animals more than humans, why are no animals even allowed in this building? This is weird. Admit that you like humans.
That's so...
You freaks and liars.
Humans are the only animals that are vegan.
Yes, I should have said that instead of just being booed and getting sad.
Well, you know.
Yeah, I like humans. We made up stories and nice buildings and things.
Yeah.
Like, cats and dogs are great as well.
Sure.
But I'm very interested in humans. I don't like this form of animal rights which is animals are better than humans.
Yeah, let's not get into that.
Like, they aren't. we're all awful. Let's be honest.
Yeah, isn't it so funny? It's like the particular thing. Like, I did a gig for a friend once at Google, and I opened with sort of like taking the piss out of Google, and I thought there were some quite good jokes, but they didn't like the one where I said Bing was basically better than Google.
Well, that's factually untrue. And I can see their faces.
That's why it's funny, right? There's no one on earth who thinks
nobody could possibly think that. So for you to pretend to think, it's one of those jokes where it isn't funny to do it at the time, but it's very funny that you did it. It's hilarious that you told Google that Bing was better than Google. That is hilarious.
They were genuinely upset. I thought, there's no hope.
That's very funny.
Alasdair, I think we've gone slightly over an hour, and I know you only had an hour of your time. So thank you for being so generous with it. Just before you go, something we sometimes do, which is a bit of an arbitrary way to finish it, but sometimes elicits some sort of fun, is now that we're sort of coming out of lockdown, hopefully in 10 days time, restrictions will be eased. Hopefully. Who knows?
We'll see.
Not trying to jinx it.
It'll probably still be in 10 days time whenever this comes out. And then
well,
still
exactly.
in 10 days time, 10 days after that. But we'll see.
But just considering those, I think, 18 months, whatever it's been, almost maybe 2 years, whatever. What would you say has been your lockdown low and your lockdown high, if you had to? Okay.
Without being too vain, I did a video that did well in January. I made a video spoofing Scandi Noirs.
I've seen this. It's absolutely hilarious. I'll link to it in the description notes.
Please do. It's quite funny. I don't think it's that much funnier than my other videos, but for some reason it's the one that did really well and got millions of views. And some of the other things I've got to do since then have been off the back of that one video doing well, which was nice. I mean, I wouldn't say it went viral in like the full, what color is this dress kind of
right.
viral.
It's not Despacito, but
No. but it did nicely well. So it helped. It got a lot more attention to my YouTube and Twitter. So now I have people sort of watching my videos, whereas previously virtually no one was, and it all happened very quickly. So that was brilliant. That was kind of nice, and also kept a moderate amount of success. So not a ridiculous, life-changing amount of clicks, but enough that now when I post a video, people like them.
That's a lot of success. 3.5 million views. It's a lot of success.
That's all right, yeah. And some upvotes.
Interestingly, you've chosen the route that not many people do, which is you've started with the high, and here we are, and you're gonna.
Oh, now I have to. And now to end on the bad news, the low. What was the? I think the saddest part of lockdown for me was. I know I've been okay. I haven't caught the virus, and I haven't lost anyone to the virus. So I'm doing my career low. So this is all very, very repressed British, not really talking about the real stuff. But luckily, I've escaped the horrors of that. Unlike many friends who've had or people who've gone through real mental health struggles during this time, because it hasn't been easy. The low point for me was in like September of last year, when Edinburgh didn't happen for the first time. So I didn't go up for the first time in years.
Yeah, and it was the first ever in its history, right? 150 something years that the Fringe didn't happen. Yeah,
and I hadn't finished the show I was trying to write. I was just left with a pile of notes. But also the industry ticked on, and people got plucked out, and people got shows commissioned, and people got opportunities, and I didn't. And it made you realise that to some extent, it was a bit of a pantomime. Like, oh, right, so the industry doesn't actually just go up to Edinburgh with an open mind, watch a load of shows, and then decide who gets the opportunity. That's not how it works. Maybe it is once in a while when someone really breaks out with a fantastic show that really changes everything and is the show everyone's talking about. But for most people, there isn't a straightforward sort of ladder of success that you climb rung by rung, putting hard work in and getting success out. The realization that, it doesn't work like that, and everything is carrying on just as it would have anyway, except I didn't even get to do a show, because the frustrating thing about not being able to perform was one of the things that makes you feel all right when other people get an opportunity you might have wanted is being able to actually do the thing. The thing that made me feel fine about somebody else getting something, because I can feel envy, but I rarely get a situation where someone gets something and I think they shouldn't have got that. I should have. I usually think that they deserve that, but also I know I am capable of doing that, so I wish I had that chance, but I don't want to have it at their expense. But the thing that makes all of those sort of nasty tummy feelings okay is going out and doing stand-up and being quite decent at it. I'm not claiming any more than that. Because when you're on stage and you're doing it and you're like, yeah, I knew I could do this. I can actually do this. That's the thing that makes it all okay. And that's what's good about Edinburgh, is you get to do 30 shows.
Yeah.
And that can be really fun. It isn't always, but it can be really fun. Actually doing the thing makes it all worthwhile. And realizing that all of the horrible career stuff still happens, but without the live stuff happening, that's not so great.
Yeah.
That wasn't very fun.
The veneer of the meritocracy slightly melts away.
Yes, yeah.
There are elements.
Then I made a good video and my life turned around. You can do it too, listener.
And are you going to Edinburgh this year? Are you going to take part in it?
This year, no.
No, I think correct.
I've got stuff to write that doesn't involve anybody catching a horrible disease on my behalf.
Right. But are you back out gigging now as things?
I have begun to. Yeah,
right.
So I've got a few gigs on the cards. I'm not really hustling madly for them at this point.
Yeah,
but I'm beginning to gig.
Good. Yeah.
Who knows for how long? For as long as we're allowed to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know. I feel people who are jumping in full guns blazing, like gig. I just don't trust that will sustain. I don't know. I've been beaten too many times by this government.
Yeah, in a way, I think it's a good thing that it's not going to go back to usual completely, because, like, for instance, disabled people have been able to go to live comedy gigs much more easily. And in some cases, that they simply wouldn't have been able to go to.
Yeah, and
it probably feels very unfair for them that these things have suddenly appeared and are now a prospect of them being snatched away has got to be kind of frustrating. So I think we need to find a way of diversifying the type of stuff that we do and doing a mixture of online stuff and live stuff for the foreseeable future. Because I don't think like Twitch streaming and stuff, I don't think that's going to go away now that people have discovered it. And I think that's great because it opens things up to a new audience, as well as it opens that audience up to new comedians and performers they wouldn't otherwise have seen.
Brilliant. Well, what a lovely positive note to end on.
After the
crushing lows,
yes,
and the dizzying highs, and the somewhere in between. I think we were in 1776 at one point.
We started in 1776, and now we're bang up to date in 2019.
Well, wonderful chat. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. It's been really nice to see you, mate.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
My pleasure. Take care. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the show. If you've enjoyed it, please give us 5 stars and consider becoming a subscriber and maybe even supporting us on Patreon. Really, really, really helps me continue making this show. If you haven't enjoyed it, then you can fuck off. Many, many thanks to Nils Hennis-Steer for the amazing music and to Dave Fox for the cool artwork. Please keep coming back every week for more Bliss of the Abyss.
Message 1.